Hello, my name's Edwina Archer and I'm the funding lead for Active Derbyshire and Active Notts, and this is a short presentation about Sport England Small Grants Programme. Sport England Small Grants Programme provides grants of between £300 up to £10,000. By exception, they may consider awarding slightly more than £10,000. If you think you need more than £10,000 to deliver your project, it's strongly recommended that you speak to Sport England grant officers first. The funding is for up to 3 years of activity. It's strongly recommended that you consider the time frame that you need to deliver your project successfully. So you need obviously enough time to do the delivery, but also think about whether you've got another project in mind which might need Sport England Small Grants support from in the future. So think about your time frame very carefully if you're wanting to do something else in the future that's supported by this fund. The fund will only support new additional activity, so it won't fund repeat or regular activity, and the sort of expenditure that's supported is revenue expenditure, so they won't fund capital expenditure. If you've got a capital project, then you could consider Sport England's Community Asset Fund. So in terms of the sort of expenditure that could be supported through this programme, it could be coaching costs, it could be coach education costs, so if you need to train up volunteers to deliver your activities, this fund could support that. It could be venue hire that you need to deliver your new additional activities. It also could be promotional costs. They can also support the cost of equipment. So we're talking about movable equipment, not capital equipment. So what they define as movable is something that can be easily moved. So it could be bolted into the grounds, but as long as it can be easily unbolted and moved, then that could be supported through this programme. There's no deadline, so you can apply at any time. If you've considered this programme in the past, you'll have seen that projects supported were for people from the age of 13 and above. They've reduced that age frame. They've reduced it to 5 years, so you can have activities supported through this programme for people from the age of 5 upwards. There's no upper limit. The application form is actually relatively straightforward. There's 4 key questions and we'll have a look at those later on in this presentation, but there's some really important things you need to get right if you want to be submitting a successful application through this fund, but we'll look at that a bit later on in this presentation. Decisions are fairly quick. You'll get an answer pretty quickly, usually within about 8 weeks. Sport England grant officers might come back to you with clarifying questions, which might slightly delay that time frame, but they estimate that you should hear back from them within a couple of months or so. These are the priorities for the fund. So there's 3 key priorities here. Absolute top of the list, the main priority for Sport England is around getting inactive people to become more active. However, they're also interested in projects that are about developing lasting sporting habits or projects that develop more positive attitudes among young people. Sport England is particularly interested in engaging the following groups of people. So for example, people on lower incomes. They're also interested in projects that involve getting inactive people to become more active, or projects that focus on women or black and minority ethnic groups. Sport England's interested in helping everyone to take part in physical activity, so that includes formal sport, but it also includes informal activity as well. So in terms of formal sport, Sport England has a very long list of recognised sports, and you'll find that on their website. Have a look through that list, and if you find that your activity isn't included in that list, give Sport England a ring and just chat through your project just to make sure that it is something that they can support. In terms of formal sports, some sports are considered as high risk. If you're doing a high risk sport, then there would need to be affiliation with the national governing body for that sport. I mentioned earlier that the age range considered by this fund has changed, so it used to support projects for people aged over 13 years. They will now look at projects for people from the age of 5. There's no upper limit to the age range that the fund can support. So for projects involving children, they're principally interested in active play, where children are most likely to be in charge. They're also interested in projects that have a whole family approach. Sport England have provided some clarity around what sort of football projects they would support, so they will prioritise football projects that are working with people from lower socioeconomic groups and that seek to address identified barriers to participation in football. So the fund revenue projects, as we've mentioned before, and non-fixed equipment such as movable goalposts, but they won't fund capital costs. So if you're thinking about a project that needs capital funding for a football project, then consider Football Foundation's funding. For this part of the presentation, we'll have a look at the application form. So additional to the usual questions that you would see on a grant application form regarding the applicant organisation and project costs, there's also information required regarding participant numbers, so the approximate number of people that you would expect to benefit from your project. There's a short section of up to 100 words where they ask you to describe your project. Use those words very carefully. This is kind of the first port of call for the grant assessor in terms of getting an understanding about the projects that you want to deliver. So I would recommend that you form your words around key points such as what it is that you want to do, how you're going to do it, and what will result from that delivery of that project. So that will give you a structure to describe your project. I've usually found that when I've written these application forms in the past that it takes up 3 or 4 sentences, and you've actually got a few words at the end within that 100-word limit to perhaps say a couple of other points as well. But keep it short, keep it sweet. In terms of the rest of the application form, there's 4 key sections. Each section has up to 500 words. You'll find that you probably use all of those 500 words for the evidence of needs section, but for some of the other sections you may not use all those 500 words. That's not a problem, as long as you're making the key points to allow the assessor to get an understanding about your project and provide them with enough reassurance that they will feel that that project will be delivered successfully. Then it's fine not to use all of those 500 words. We'll have a look at each section in detail over the next 4 slides. The first main question on the application form, so it's one of the 4 questions that you've got up to 500 words to answer, is evidence of need. So what it is that your project is looking to address, what's the problem, what's the issue, is there a demand from the local community for the project, and how do you know that the project is something that they'll be interested in? So the best way to evidence need is by consultation with the potential beneficiaries. You can do this in a number of ways, so this could be through a formal survey or formal or informal meetings. Just make sure you capture that evidence and include the key points in your application form. You could also get letters of support from other organisations, other stakeholder organisations. So for example, if you're delivering a project, extracurricular project for example, to young people, and you're working closely with the local school, you ask them for a letter of support. Include key points from that letter in your application form, and you can also upload that letter of support with your bid as well. You might also be able to show that there's a gap in local provision, or that there was waiting lists for the activity that you wanted to deliver. Local statistics and data may also help you evidence need. You can find some really excellent information on Sport England's website. So if you Google Sport England Local Insight Tool, you'll get to a web page, or hopefully get to a web page that provides you with a search engine to search for local data. You just need the postcode for where or postcodes for the activities that you want to deliver. Type that into the search bar and you will see a whole range of different information. Be selective, include the information that relates directly to your project, so it could be around inactivity levels or deprivation levels, but there's a wide range of information that could help you support the need for your project. You could also link your project into local or regional strategies if you know that your project is something that is focused within those, or within your national governing body's strategy if you're focused on recognised sport. Include as many of these different types of evidence of need to show Sport England why your project is important. So the second question is looking at what difference your project will make. So they're keen to understand what the project's impact will be. So they want to know how many people will benefit from your project, how many times people will take part, and what will change following their involvement. So you can consider things like what the impact will be on people's physical activity levels, mental well-being, social community development. They're also interested in individual development or economic development as well. Have a look back at those 3 key priorities that we looked at earlier on in the presentation. So for example, the top priority is around getting inactive people active. So in this section, make sure that you link back to at least one of those key priorities. The third question on the application form focuses on the planning and delivery of your project. On this slide, I've uploaded a copy of Sport England's project delivery plan template. Now, I would strongly recommend using this template or something similar. It provides you with a structure to formulate your project. It also provides the assessor with reassurance that you know what you're doing and it's a project that can be deliverable. I would strongly recommend that you don't use this as a substitute for the content that you put in your application form. The primary source of information that the assessor will use will be from your application. You can upload your project plan, your delivery template with your bid, but make sure all the key points are within the application form. So the key questions are around, for example, what it is that you want to do, when, where, who's going to be involved, and how much it will cost and what will result at the end of it. So for example, what activities will the project deliver? When will it happen? For example, the start date, how often, the length of the sessions and the end date. Where will it happen? For example, the venue or venues. Who is the focus? Is the activity focused on? For example, the age, gender. Is it on inactive people? Also include details of who will be involved in delivering specific activities and how the activities will happen. For example, do you need to train a coach, purchase equipment, and how much this might cost? Also include details of what will result from the project. So for example, the number of people you would expect to take part. This sort of information will really give the assessor of your application confidence that you will be able to deliver the project. The fourth and final question on the application form, or the main question on the application form, is regarding the wider benefit of the project. So how will people continue to take part in the project? How long will this be sustained for, and how will funds be raised for this to happen? So think about the pathway for the potential beneficiaries. Will there be the opportunity for them to continue to be involved in the activity? Would this be through signposting to other sessions, which has capacity to take on new beneficiaries, or will you be looking to access funding from other sources to continue to deliver this activity? Now coming towards the end of the presentation, my top tip is that you have a read through the guidance before you complete your application form. If you've got any queries which aren't answered by the guidance, you can contact Sport England grant officers directly. You can phone them up or you can use their web chat facility. The very people that are assessing your application form are answering the telephones or using this web chat facility. I've often found when I've rung them up with a particular query, they've come back with more information that's actually very useful. But if you want to use the web chat facility, so if you see in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, it says speak to us now about grant funding or about funding, just click that box and it takes you through to a chat facility. I've used that chat facility during the working day and I found they've got back to me very quickly using that, so it's very good. We're now at the end of the presentation. My contact details are listed here along with my colleagues John Sparks. We cover both Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. We do newsletters, funding newsletters for both counties, so if you're interested in having up-to-date information on latest funding for sport and physical activity, you can subscribe to our newsletters for either counties or both counties if you want. Just go to the homepage of either the Active Notts or Active Derbyshire websites, scroll down towards the bottom and you can subscribe there. If you'd rather not subscribe, we do a funding news stream as well on both websites. This news stream is updated on a weekly, if not daily basis, with the local and national funding opportunities that are relevant for sport and physical activity.